The Sterling and Associates 10th anniversary gala was held in the grand celestial ballroom of the Meridian Tower, and every detail had been designed to project the image of a firm at the pinnacle of its power. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto tables draped in midnight blue silk. Ice sculptures of the scales of justice flanked the entrance, slowly melting under the heat of 1,000 bodies. The champagne was Krug, the orchestra was Philharmonic, and the guest list included federal judges, Fortune 500 general counsels, 2 former attorneys general, and the legal correspondent for every major news network in the country. I stood near the back of the room, wearing a gown of emerald silk that I had bought 3 years ago for a different event, a different life. My husband, Marcus Sterling, had told me it was too much for tonight. He'd said I should wear something more understated. Something that wouldn't draw attention, that I wore it anyway. It was the last piece of my old wardrobe that I hadn't donated, and I was going to wear it like armor. No one was speaking to me. The partners who had once called me a mentor were now averting their eyes. The associates I had hired and trained were clustering at the far end of the bar, glancing at me with expressions that mixed pity and fear. The clients I had personally represented for years were being steered away by handlers I didn't recognize. I was a ghost at my own firm's celebration, and the man who had made me one was about to take the stage. Marcus Sterling ascended the podium with the easy confidence of a man who had never been denied anything in his life. He was 47, silver-templed, wearing a bespoke Brioni tuxedo that I had paid for with the proceeds from the biggest case I had ever won, the Asterisk Chin V. Apex Pharmaceuticals asterisk class action that had resulted in a $3.2 billion settlement. That case had been mine. Every motion, every deposition, every closing argument. Marcus had been the managing partner who shook hands at press conferences and took the credit. I had been the invisible wife who did the actual work. Beside him, ascending the stage steps with the liquid grace of a woman who knew every eye in the room was on her, was Sabine Moreau. She was 32, French Vietnamese, the firm's director of client relations. She was wearing a scarlet dress that matched the rubies at her throat, rubies I recognized because they had belonged to my mother. They had disappeared from my jewelry box 6 months ago, and Marcus had told me I must have misplaced them. Her belly was swollen with the unmistakable curve of pregnancy 0.7 months, I estimated. 7 months ago, Marcus had been at a deposition in Geneva. She placed her hand on his arm with the ease of long practice, and he covered it with his own, their fingers interlaced. They looked like a power couple from the cover of a business magazine, the visionary law firm CEO and his elegant, expectant partner. They looked like the future. And I, the wife of 14 years, the founder of the firm, the woman who had argued and won 17 Supreme Court cases, I looked like the past. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, valued clients, Marcus began, his voice warm and resonant. 10 years ago, I founded Sterling and Associates with a vision to build a law firm that would redefine what legal excellence could mean. Tonight, we celebrate a decade of unprecedented success, a decade of landmark victories, of justice served, of a legacy that will endure for generations. Applause filled the ballroom. I did not clap. I stood frozen, my champagne glass trembling in my hand, listening to my husband claim credit for something I had built before I ever met him. But tonight, I must also share something deeply personal. Marcus's voice shifted, thickening with rehearsed emotion. My wife, Isabella, has been at my side since the beginning. She has been a loyal partner and a devoted spouse, but over the past several years, she has been struggling with a severe and worsening mental illness, paranoid delusions, erratic and sometimes violent behavior, a growing conviction that I am conspiring against her, that her colleagues are stealing her work, that the firm she helped build is somehow being taken from her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted. I saw the correspondent from the American Lawyer typing furiously. I saw the former Attorney General exchange a worried glance with his wife. Last month, Marcus continued, Isabella physically attacked Sabine in the firm's executive suite. She accused Sabine of seducing her husband and stealing her jewelry. Security had to be called. It was the third such incident in 6 months. Our firm physician, in consultation with an independent psychiatrist, has diagnosed Isabella with paranoid schizophrenia with psychotic features. The diagnosis is clear, the prognosis is guarded, and the time has come for me to make the most difficult decision of my life. Sabine stepped forward, her hand now resting protectively on her belly. I want to say to Isabella, if you're listening, we love you. We are doing this out of love. The firm will be in good hands. You can rest now, knowing that your legacy is secure. Marcus placed his hand over his heart. Effective immediately, and with the full support of the firm's partnership committee and our medical advisors, I am assuming sole control of Sterling and Associates. Isabella's minority stake will be transferred to a trust under my management. She will be moving to a private psychiatric facility where she can receive the long-term care she needs. And my partner, in every sense of the word, Sabine Moreau, will be stepping into the role of executive partner, overseeing the firm's strategic direction as we enter our second decade. He reached into his jacket and produced a document. I have here the court order granting me conservatorship over Isabella's personal and financial affairs, signed this morning by Judge Harold Thornton. I did not want this, but I will not shirk my duty. Isabella, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I will always love you. But I have to protect this firm, our clients, and the family that Sabine and I are building together. The room erupted in applause. 1,500 of the most powerful people in American law were clapping for my destruction. I set down my champagne glass. The sound it made against the marble floor was sharp, deliberate, a punctuation mark in the silence that followed the applause. That was a magnificent performance, Marcus, I said, and my voice carried. I had spent 20 years projecting my voice to juries without a microphone at a ballroom was nothing. Did you rehearse it with Sabine, or did the litigation team draft it for you? Marcus's smile froze. Isabella, the medical transport team is standing by. Please don't make this more difficult. I wouldn't dream of it. I walked toward the stage, and the crowd parted before me like the Red Sea. But before your medical transport team escorts me away, I have a few questions. For instance, who actually founded Sterling and Associates? I did, Marcus said, his voice tightening. Everyone knows that. It's in the name. It's in the name, I repeated. Sterling, that's my name. Marcus, that M-Y maiden name. Isabella Sterling. You took my name when we married, not the other way around. You were Marcus Hale when I met you, a failed personal injury lawyer with 3 malpractice judgments and a suspended license in 2 states. I was the one who got your license reinstated. I was the one who brought you into my firm, the firm I had already been running for 4 years before you ever walked through the door. I was the one who rebranded it as Sterling and Associates, so you could feel like a partner instead of an employee, and you repaid me by stealing my work, my name, and now my sanity. This is exactly the kind of paranoid delusion I was describing, Marcus said, turning to the crowd with a sad shake of his head. She's been saying these things for years. There's no truth to any of it. No truth. I pulled out my phone. Then let's ask the crowd. By a show of hands, how many people in this room were personally recruited to this firm by me? Dozens of hands went up. Senior partners, associates, the head of the pro bono division, the chief financial officer. Marcus's face tightened. And how many of you have ever seen Marcus Sterling argue a case in court? The hands dropped. Not a single hand remained raised. The room was very quiet now. The journalists were typing so fast their keyboards were clicking like cicadas. I have argued and won 17 cases before the United States Supreme Court, I said. Marcus has never argued a single one. I have personally negotiated settlements totaling over $40 billion. Marcus has never closed a deal larger than a car lease. I built this firm from a 2-room office with a borrowed laptop into the most formidable litigation practice on the Eastern Seaboard. And Marcus took the credit, because I let him. Because I loved him, because I believed that marriage meant sharing. But he wasn't sharing, he was stealing. I pressed a button on my phone. The massive screens behind the stage, the ones that had been displaying the Sterling and Associates logo, flickered to black. A document appeared. This is the original partnership agreement for Sterling and Associates, dated 14 years ago. Note the signature at the bottom. It's mine, only mine. Marcus wasn't a partner. He was an employee. He didn't become a named partner until 5 years later, when I amended the agreement as an anniversary gift. A gift. I gave him half my firm, and he used it to destroy me. Marcus's face had gone the color of old paper. These documents are forged. She's been fabricating evidence for months. It's part of her illness. Then let's look at something that can't be forged. I pressed another button. The screen filled with a new image, a psychiatric evaluation signed by a Dr. Harold Reinhardt. This is the report that diagnosed me with paranoid schizophrenia. That IT was written by a doctor whose medical license was revoked 3 years ago for falsifying court-ordered psychiatric evaluations. Marcus paid him $500,000 through a shell company in the Cayman Islands. That I have the bank records, that I have the emails, that I have DR. Reinhardt's sworn affidavit, which my attorney obtained this morning, confessing to the fraud. The screen filled with more documents. Wire transfers, encrypted emails, the affidavit with Dr. Reinhardt's signature at the bottom. This is a lie, Marcus shouted, his composure cracking. She's doctored all of this. Sabine, tell them. But Sabine was backing away, her face white. Marcus, you told me the records were sealed. You told me she couldn't prove anything. Shut up, Sabine. No, I won't shut up. I pressed another button. Because there's more. Let's talk about the conservatorship order that IT was signed by Judge Harold Thornton. Who is Judge Thornton? He's a state circuit judge who has received over $100,000 in campaign contributions from political action committees associated with Sterling and Associates. He's also a longtime personal friend of Marcus's, and he presided over the divorce of Marcus's first wife 20 years ago. The order is legally invalid due to judicial bias, and it will be vacated within the week. More documents filled the screen. Campaign finance records, photographs of Marcus and Judge Thornton at a charity golf tournament. The text of the judicial ethics complaint that my lawyer had filed that morning. And while we're on the subject of wives, I continued, let's talk about Marcus's first wife. Her name was Diana Chin. She was a brilliant corporate lawyer who founded a boutique firm in Chicago. Marcus married her, joined her firm, and within 3 years, she had been forced out by a mental health crisis that was documented by, you guessed it, Dr. Harold Reinhardt. She spent 2 years in a psychiatric facility. By the time she was released, Marcus had dissolved her firm and sold its assets. She died 6 years ago, destitute and alone. I spoke to her sister last week. She told me everything. The room was utterly silent now, the kind of silence that precedes an earthquake. Marcus's face had gone from white to gray. Sabine was clutching her belly, her eyes wide with dawning horror. You're a predator, Marcus, I said. You don't build companies. You marry women who build companies, and then you destroy them. Diana was your first victim. I was supposed to be your second. But I found out what you were doing 3 months ago, and I started preparing. That I hired my own investigator. I documented every lie, every bribe, every betrayal. And I took it all to the one person you should have been afraid of. The doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A woman walked through, silver-haired, 73 years old, wearing a perfectly cut charcoal suit. She was flanked by 6 attorneys and a security detail that moved with the quiet coordination of a presidential escort. Her name was Margaret Sterling Vance. She was my mother's sister. She was the founder of Sterling Global, the largest privately held legal network in the world, and she had been waiting for this moment for 14 years. Madam Chairwoman, Margaret said, her voice ringing through the silent ballroom. The evidence has been reviewed. The fraudulent conservatorship has been voided. M.R. Hale, whose legal name is Marcus Hale, not Sterling, is under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted corporate theft. Ms. Morrow is under arrest as an accessory. The FBI is waiting outside. Marcus staggered backward, his hands gripping the podium as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Chairwoman, Isabella is your node. N.O. That's impossible, she's an orphan. She told me her parents were dead. My parents are dead, I said. But my family isn't, and my mother was Genevieve Vance, the founder of Vance International, the largest legal conglomerate on the planet. She built an empire from nothing, and when she died, she left it to me. But I wanted to prove myself on my own terms, so I changed my name. I took my father's surname, Sterling, and I built a small firm in Manhattan that I wanted to see if I could succeed without the family fortune. And I did it. I built Sterling and Associates into a powerhouse. But you saw it as something to steal. You thought I was alone. You thought I had no one to protect me. You were wrong. You're a billionaire? Sabine's voice was a shriek. Marcus, you told me she was nobody. You told me the firm was yours. It is mine. She's lying. All of this is a fabrication. No, Margaret said coldly. It's not, and the evidence is already in the hands of the U.S. Attorney's office. You are finished, Mr. Hale. The only question is whether you spend the rest of your life in prison or whether you cooperate and receive a slightly shorter sentence. The FBI agents entered the ballroom. They moved through the crowd with the quiet, practiced efficiency of people who had done this 1,000 times. Marcus tried to run, but 2 agents intercepted him before he had taken 3 steps. They pinned his arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs into place. Isabella, please. 14 years. I loved you in the beginning. I really loved you. No, I said. You loved what I could give you. You loved the money, the status, the platform, but you never loved me. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life learning what it feels like to have everything taken from you. They dragged him toward the exit. Sabine stumbled after him, her scarlet dress catching on a chair, her face a mask of tears and terror. I'm pregnant. You can't arrest me. I'm pregnant. Pregnancy is not immunity, Margaret said. You'll receive appropriate medical care in federal custody. Your child will be placed with family services or your designated guardian. I don't have a guardian. I don't have anyone. You should have thought of that before you helped him try to destroy my niece. The doors closed behind them and the ballroom erupted, not in horror, but in thunderous, cathartic applause. Journalists were standing on their chairs, shouting questions. The partners who had averted their eyes were now rushing toward the stage, desperate to prove their loyalty. The clients were demanding to speak with me directly. The orchestra, unsure what to do, began playing a triumphant fanfare. Margaret embraced me. Your mother would be so proud of you. She always said you were the strongest person she'd ever known. She just wished you'd believe it yourself. I believe it now, I said, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. I'm sorry it took me so long. Don't apologize. You survived. That's what matters. She gestured toward the back of the room. A man was standing near the doors. He was tall, silver-haired, with the quiet intensity of someone who had spent his life building things that lasted. He was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and when our eyes met, he smiled. Adrian Sterling, my father's second cousin, the CEO of Sterling Global, the man who had been quietly building a legal empire while I was trapped in a marriage that was destroying me. Adrian, I said, I didn't expect you to come. I've been waiting for this call for 14 years, he said. Your aunt told me what Marcus was doing, that I've had my legal team building a case against him since the moment I found out. I only wish I could have acted sooner. You're here now. That's what matters. He took my hand. Sterling and Associates is a remarkable firm, but it's only a fraction of what you're capable of. I want to talk to you about a merger, a real merger between your practice and Sterling Global's litigation division. You would serve as chairwoman of the combined entity, the largest woman-led law firm in the world. I looked at him for a long moment. You're offering me a partnership? I'm offering you what you should have had all along. Control. Autonomy. The power to build something no one can ever take from you. I smiled. Then let's talk. The trial of Marcus Hale was the most widely covered legal proceeding of the decade. The evidence my aunt's team had gathered was overwhelming. The bribed psychiatrist, the forged conservatorship, the shell companies, the pattern of abuse stretching back to his first wife, Diana Chin. The prosecution called 37 witnesses, including Sabine Morrow, who testified against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony was devastating. She admitted to helping him fabricate the mental illness narrative, to stealing my jewelry, to planning the conservatorship with him for over a year. She received 5 years in federal prison and permanent disbarment. Her child was born in a prison hospital and placed with her parents. Marcus was convicted on 31 counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, attempted corporate theft, and in a late addition to the charges, the wrongful imprisonment of Diana Chin, which the prosecution successfully argued had contributed to her death. He was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The day of his sentencing, I was in the courtroom. He turned to look at me as the bailiffs led him away, and his face was hollow, emptied of everything that had once made him charming. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Sterling and Associates was dissolved and absorbed into Sterling Global's litigation division, which was renamed Vance Litigation Group in honor of my mother. I became chairwoman of the combined entity, overseeing a global network of 1,400 attorneys across 37 offices. Within 5 years, we had become the most formidable litigation practice in the world, handling cases that reshaped industries and changed laws that I argued, and won 4 more Supreme Court cases. I was profiled in every major publication, that I was appointed to the President's Commission on Judicial Ethics, that I became, for the first time in my life, exactly who I was meant to be. Sabine Morrow was released from prison after serving 4 years of her sentence. She attempted to contact me twice, once through a lawyer, once through a letter. I did not respond. The last I heard, she was living in a small town in Ohio, working as a paralegal for a 2-person firm that didn't know her history. And Adrian Sterling became my partner, not just in business, but in life. We were married 3 years after the gala in a small ceremony at my aunt's estate in the Hudson Valley. Margaret was the officiant. My mother's photograph sat in the front row, beside a bouquet of white roses. On our wedding night, Adrian asked me why I had trusted him after everything I had survived. "Because you never asked me to shrink," I said. "Marcus spent 14 years trying to make me invisible. You spent 3 years encouraging me to grow. You never told me my ambition was unfeminine. You never told me I was too much. You saw the woman I was and you loved her, not in spite of her power, but because of it." "I loved you the moment I met you," he said. "At your mother's funeral 25 years ago, you were 18 years old, and you gave a eulogy that made everyone in the church weep. I thought, that's the most extraordinary person I've ever seen. I knew, even then, that you were destined for something remarkable." I kissed him, and I thought about the woman I had been, the woman who had trusted Marcus Hale, loved him, and nearly been destroyed by him. The woman who had stood in a ballroom full of people who thought she was insane and proven them all wrong. She had been naive. She had been wounded. But she had also been fierce, resilient, and unstoppable. 20 years after the gala, I stand on the rooftop of Vance Tower, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. MY company thrives. MY marriage is strong. MY legacy is secure. My daughter, we named her Genevieve after my mother, is 17 years old, already arguing with her debate coach and dreaming of law school. Somewhere, Marcus Hale is sitting in a federal prison, counting the years that will never end. Somewhere, Sabine Morrow is living a life of quiet obscurity, and I am here, alive, free, victorious. Not because I was lucky, not because I was cruel, but because I finally learned that the woman they tried to erase was the woman who would rewrite the law. And I am just getting started.